Lawrence Anini is regarded as one of the most notorious criminals in Nigerian history. But what many people don't know is that Lawrence wasn't as dangerous as history presents him to be. In fact, many people seem to remember Lawrence Anini as one badass commando Terminator type of criminal who reigned terror in Nigeria throughout the 80s. In a lot of people's list of top 10 most dangerous criminals in Nigerian history, Lawrence Anini is always number one. If you Google the most dangerous criminal in Nigerian history, Lawrence Anini would pop up. But the truth is, Lawrence wasn't as dangerous as history remembers him to be. If anything, he might just be the most overhyped criminal in Nigerian history. But the only reason why he's in a lot of people's lists is because he's one of the most documented and one of the most memorable from that time. But what a lot of people don't know is that Lawrence Anini is most likely taking credit for something other people did. In this video, we're going to look at 5 facts about Lawrence Anini that shows he wasn't as badass as history paints him to be. And also, we will be comparing historical facts with the 2005 movie of his name because the movie is the closest representation of his life as a criminal. Another thing we'll be using in this video would be common sense. So let's get started. Let's find out why this man might just be the wickedest criminal in history, but somehow people remember him to be the most dangerous. All of that will be explained in this video. But before we continue, please like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed to this channel. And you can also tell us where you're watching from as the video goes. Over time, you also tell us your thoughts in a lot of these facts. So let's get into it. At number 5. His reign of terror. History describes Anini to be a notorious criminal that reigned supreme throughout the 1980s in what was formerly called Bendel State, a combination of Delta State, Edo State, and Bayelsa State at the time. So it was like one big empire in the 80s. But a lot of his criminal activities took place in Benin City. And if you read up on Anini, a lot of articles will tell you different things. Some will say he reigned terror throughout the 1980s in Benin City. Some articles will even claim that he reigned terror throughout the 1970s and 1980s in Benin City. His reign of terror, or his duration of criminal activities single-handedly that gave him the name or made him so popular, did not exactly last an entire decade. Contrary to what the blogs are writing now and contrary to what history seems to remember him to be, in documented facts, Anini only reigned supreme for 3.5 months. He didn't reign supreme throughout the 80s. Saying he reigned supreme throughout the 80s or 70s is a stretch, is a reach. It's a lie, because his reign of terror, as is being said, only lasted for 3.5 months, or let's just say 4 months, between August of 1986 to November of 1986. It was around towards the end of November and December that he was caught and arrested. So why are a lot of people saying that he reigned terror throughout the 80s or he reigned terror throughout the 70s and 80s? Whereas in actuality, he only reigned terror, if you want to call that terror, for 4 months. This is the problem. Yes, there's a slight truth to why some blogs may want to say he reigned terror throughout the 80s or reigned terror throughout the 70s, but it's not as they made it seem. Yes, Anini as a young boy began his criminal activity at an early age. He started off as a motor park tout who organized the touts and made peace among the motor park drivers and motorcycle drivers. Even some market women around the community in Benin, they knew him. He was as relevant as it gets. It was also said he was good as a mechanic. He worked in a mechanic workshop, which meant that he knew cars and knew the parts of cars. And his criminal activity started off slowly from stealing car parts into stealing vehicles that were parked on the roadside. And that is how he started. And this may have begun towards the late 70s into the 80s. Anini as a beginner criminal started stealing spare parts and started stealing vehicles. But the thing is, he wasn't robbing these vehicles with guns. He wasn't going with weapons. What he usually did then was, if a car is parked, he would break into it, find a way to start it without the key, and drive off with it. He didn't kill anybody this period of time. He didn't point gun. He didn't pick up a gun. And funny enough, Anini most likely did not hold a gun until 1986. So in the early stage of his criminal activities, or in the early stage of his criminal career, he was only stealing cars, trucks, motorcycles, and that was just about it. And he was eventually caught and arrested at one point after he stole a truck that contained goods. You know, one of those trucks that carries goods and packages for people, and it was said he stole one of those and sold the packages.
So I was driving in Sapler garage. From there, my father bought 504 for me. Then I was walking. So later on, when I get to Warri, got an accident. So I was admitted. Before I come back, my father gave up. I met one big lorry, full loaded of medicine at Ebony Slima. Then I carried that lorry. Then when I carried that lorry, I drive it out, I sell it. So I drive the car to our woman. Then I sell the lorry with the load. Then the whole money was 50,000, which I buy the goods. So from there, the man we sold it for, he gave us 20,000 at the time. After small time, then this man, he organized for us that he's not going to pay the money. Then he have to use police people to arrest. So I was only the person that escaped out of 3 of us. I escaped down to Benin. Then I treat myself with the beating. Then from there, then go. Then from there, they come arrest me, my father's compound. I said, whether did I know all those boys? I said, well, it's a trailer driver, I remember myself, I'm a trailer driver. I don't know what is really happening now.
But the bottom line is, he was mostly just stealing vehicles that were parked and the drivers were not there. And after he was arrested for that one incident, he was taken to prison. It was in prison, according to history and according to the 2005 movie, that he met a group of criminal gangs who were in the cell. And this criminal gang he met in the cell were already notorious, and they were headed by a known Benin prince called Kingsley Eweka. And the movie did well to depict this part of Anini's history, where in the prison he met Kingsley Eweka and his gangs of armed robbers who were already notorious by shooting, killing, robbing banks. So those people were already on their own notorious, and that was why they were in the prison cell. And it was in that cell room that Anini was able to introduce himself and told them why he was in prison, and that was because he stole cars and vehicles and did some other petty stealing. And he did well to sell himself to them that he's good with driving and he's good with cars and he's so perfect anything concerning automobile. Eventually, when all of them would leave the cell room in the prison, through some method, they were able to pay the police off, they were able to corrupt the police, and they were able to get their freedom back. Anini would eventually join this gang that was headed by Kingsley Eweka.
First, I'm the truck driver and I'm the mechanic. That's the one where I learned.
Feature big lorry.
Oh, and everything I will drive, I will repair lorry.
You drive lorry.
First,
You repair.
I will drive lorry, I will repair. I will drive lorry, I will repair.
Kene, this is me. You know it. Shipping tomorrow down, we arrange our bail. Yes, and tomorrow will come up for you. You get me, go bail you.
Nobody even knows I did here. My papa don't know, my mama don't know. Even the person where they take me, they can come up for you. You don't know I did here. Nobody knows whether you don't pay me.
We go bail you. We go arrange your bail with our own.
And this was the second stage of Anini's criminal activities. Anini started working with Kingsley Eweka and his gang. And this was throughout the early 80s, heading towards 1985 and 1986. But the problem is, even when Anini was working with Kingsley Eweka, he wasn't relevant in that group. He was just the driver. He was the one who would drive. And if there was need to hijack a car, because they still hijacked vehicles and stole cars with the guns this time around, Anini would be the one to find a way to start the vehicle without the car keys and drive off. And that was mostly the role Anini played in Kingsley Eweka's gang of criminals. He most likely possibly held a gun 1 or 2 times, but a lot of his job in Kingsley Eweka's gang was to drive. And how would he drive holding a gun and shooting? He would need his 2 hands and 2 legs to drive. So a lot of his criminal activities, or half of his criminal activities, or most of his criminal activities throughout the 80s wasn't an active, dangerous type of criminality. He was only mostly just a driver and still hijacking cars, only this time with dangerous people around him. So it was in 1986, early 1986, after Kingsley Eweka and other members of his gang were caught, arrested, and sentenced to death, that Anini decided to form his own group. He even attempted to even bring Kingsley and the other members of the gang back. He tried to pay another police officer to free them so that they can come back and they can start working together. But that did not happen. Kingsley Eweka was killed by firing squad along with other members of the gang. There's a clear view that Anini was the only person in Kingsley Eweka's gang that wasn't caught or arrested because nobody was looking for him. He wasn't even seen as a criminal. He didn't do anything. He was just a hired driver for the gang. That was why nobody was coming for him, because when he was in Kingsley Eweka's gang, he wasn't relevant, nor was he doing too much. So after Kingsley Eweka and his gang were killed, towards the end of the year, Anini decided to form his own group of criminals where he became the leader, where he became the head, where he started trying his best to be like his friend and role model, Kingsley Eweka. And that was the first time Anini became boss. That was the first time Anini became supreme. And that is when people can now start saying Anini started reigning supreme. The only problem is, unlike how many people remembers it, Anini's reign of terror only lasted for 4 months, between August to November of 1986. By the end of the year in 1986, he was captured. Number 4, his ability to appear and disappear. Many revisionist historians claim that Anini had the ability to appear and disappear at will. And this is backed up by some substantial facts that he always outsmarted the police. He would announce he was coming to rob a bank, and somehow he would go there, rob the bank, and still go scot-free without the police even catching him. And in one shootout, the police were able to say they retrieved charms that belonged to Anini. And when you do the mathematics, a criminal who wore charms and was always able to bypass or escape the police, even though the police knew he was coming, people just assumed that this man had the power to appear and disappear. And in the movie, the 2005 movie, it was shown that Anini did have himself covered spiritually, going to native doctors and collecting these charms for the purpose of robbing successfully. And that was where it kind of made people assume that he most likely had the ability to disappear and appear at will. But the truth is, that might not be very correct. Yes, he did have charms, but Anini's ability to bypass the police or escape the police even after announcing he was going to rob a bank did not exactly come from the charms that he owned. And he did not come from him appearing and disappearing. This will be a little tricky, but follow me. The reason why Anini was able to bypass the police or escape the police or made it seem as though he can appear and disappear was based on a few facts. The first one is Anini worked hand in hand with a senior police officer or with senior police officers at the time. And these police officers were the one who gave him the weapons and the information as to the activities of the police. So, which meant that Anini was always 2 or 3 steps ahead of the police, which gave him the confidence to announce that he was going to rob a bank at a particular date and still carry it on and succeed. Because the weapons that Anini and his gang operated with was not the same weapons that the police who came to fight them operated with. And one of the funny thing, or one of the biggest possibilities here, is that the same police officers that would mobilize the police officers to go and block Anini at the bank was the same senior police officer that was giving Anini weapons and information regarding this other officer. So there was a particular officer there. I don't want to say if it's Judge Iyamu, but Judge Iyamu was known around that period of time too. He most likely worked for Kingsley Eweka. But there were other senior officers who did the same thing as Judge Iyamu. So what these officers would do is they would give Anini the guns, the weapons, the good ones, AK-47, the massive weapons, and tell him information. All right, the police will come there, they'll come with one van and this is what you can do. And, they'll just give him all the details he needs. The same police officer will be the one to hear that Anini is going to rob a bank. And then he will mobilize a group of other police officers, put them in small numbers, give them the guns, those guns that shoot under-equip them and tell them to go to that bank and block Anini. And so whenever Anini meets up with these police officers were always overpowered because Anini had the bigger weapons and had more information as to how many police officers are coming, where they will be, how they would arrange themselves. So Anini was always at an advantage because a corrupt police officer was on his side. And after stealing all his loot, he would go and split it with that corrupt police officer that gave him the weapons and the information.
Money, the law, because now you bring information and information correct. We act on that. So your share. Take that. The law. I don't keep for also bottle. Don't say to go organize that shoe just now. So the thing what happened is my own share for inside are 15,000 naira. Then law, I will keep this 8,000 naira. We'll keep out for police settlement and any other expenses. No problem now. Problem the law. All those settlements, all they set all those AK people. I hope say they don't go call Yawa anyhow because everyone can see. Hey, look I know how Babake did do those days.
That was why Anini always seemed to escape the police or seem as though he can announce his attack and still get away with it. Now, another reason why Anini could actually walk down the streets or walk down the streets of Benin to buy biscuit or buy anything without him being caught is that throughout his 4 months reign, his name was what was popular. And Nini's face was something the police did not know so much. That is the major headquarters of police. Of course, the corrupt police officers who worked with him knew him by face, but majority of the police force did not know Anini by face. Unlike Kingsley Eweka, that was a known criminal, his face was known. They had pictures amongst, they knew what he looked like years throughout he was even a prince, so he was known. Anini as a criminal was not facially known. I don't know if you guys are following me. So Anini could literally rob a bank today and change his outfit and join the crowd, and people will not know that that is Anini. His name was way ahead of him. His name was what was popular. His name was what the news and blogs would report on. There was no pictures of what Anini looked like. The police did not know what he looked like. And this could be evident even in the movie. When he was finally caught and arrested, the police went to a house where they were told that Anini was there. And when they knocked at the door, Anini opened the door. They did not know it was Anini. And so they asked him, where is Anini? And being the smartass that he was, he claimed that Anini was inside the inner room, hiding under the bed. And some other group of police officers were already going into the inner room to go and check for Anini there. Not knowing that this particular guy that they were talking to was Anini himself. It was just one of the commissioners or one of the senior police officers among them that took his chance and said, nah, this boy is... Because after Anini told them that the person they were looking for was in the inner room, he was trying to get away. And that kind of gave it all away because they held him down, shot one of his leg and asked him, where is Anini? At this point, they did not know who Anini was. They could not tell Anini by face. Nobody knew who Anini was by face. It was in that moment that Anini confessed that he was the one they were looking for. And that goes to show you that even if Anini robbed a bank, his face wasn't something that was very memorable. His face wasn't something that people knew for a fact. He could rob a bank and walk down the streets, walk past a police checkpoint without his guns, without anything, and he would pass because they did not know him by face. So in other words, Anini's ability to oversee the police or bypass the police or, overpower the police and get by them had little or nothing to do with the charms, but had everything to do with the fact that he had more information and he had a backup that was also the police, and his face really wasn't that known by the media. And that was why Anini was able to act or appear to have the power to appear and disappear. Now, number 3 fact about Anini that would kind of let you know that he might not be the most dangerous person in criminal history. Number 3 is a misconception about Anini, that Anini was targeting police officers. Now, this misconception might have been made popular by the 2005 movie, where after Anini found out that Kingsley Eweka had been killed by the police officers, even though he had paid 50,000 naira to secure their release, he became angry and started claiming to avenge Kingsley Eweka's death. In the entire movie, after that scene, Anini kept saying that I'm coming for this police, they will hear me, they will see my terror, I'm going to deal with all these police officers.
Yes, sir! Yes, sir! I'm not going to kill you. The thing what happened be say, make I just give you man. Come on, get up! When they carry you to reach hospital, when they carry you to reach hospital, you go tell your guy say, Now Lawrence Anini, now he shoot you. Tell me about it, so now police now come for this side. Tell them now, like that. Let's go.
It was made to look like Anini was taking some kind of revenge on his friend Kingsley Eweka by targeting and killing police officers. Another reason why this would make sense is that throughout his 4 months reign of terror, police officers were mostly his victims. There were mostly 2 or 3 civilians. He mostly killed 2 or 3 innocent people, and that was because they kind of crossed him. I think a doctor and a nurse who tried to expose him when one of his members got injured, and maybe one person collateral damage. But a lot of his killing throughout his 4 months reign was police officers. Document or history has it that Anini killed about 9 to possibly 11 police officers. There was even an attempt on assassination on a commissioner of police at the time, but it was a failed attempt. And that was why many people believe that Anini was targeting police officers deliberately. And it looks as though, and that could have been possible because, we don't know his mind truly. But the fact of the matter is, Anini was afraid of police officers. Anini was dreadfully afraid of police officers. And that is something many people don't know. The police officers that were killed during Anini's reign of terror were killed as collateral damage. Because at the time, whenever Anini wanted to make an operation, he would announce it. He would write a letter to a bank manager or a bank executive informing them that he was going to come to that bank to rob the bank at so date, that they should prepare money for him. And clearly this bank would mobilize police officers to protect the bank. And in the end, like I said, Anini would come with his intense weapons, machine guns, and still successfully rob the bank, killing the police officers. So the police officers were always on the way of Anini, and that was why they were killed. It wasn't like Anini was going around looking for police officers to witch hunt and kill and shoot down. That was not the case. Another thing people need to understand is bank robbery was Anini's major source of income. And after Kingsley Eweka and his gang were killed, Anini had nothing. He needed to make money. He needed to survive. He needed to get back in the work that he knew. And knowing the system and knowing how it works with Kingsley Eweka's gang, Anini used that knowledge, worked with a senior police officer who offered to sponsor their gang, give them weapons, and give them intel. And when he was able to get the police officer on his side, he mobilized another group of criminals that were younger than him and also as dangerous as Kingsley Eweka's era. So he got a group of young criminals, gave them the weapons, and began operation. And he already had the knowledge of how it worked with Kingsley, and that was how he was able to organize and raise his own gang of armed robbers. And their major aim was not to go and avenge Kingsley Eweka's death by killing police officers. They were looking for money. They needed money. And then he was trying to, I think he successfully built a business somewhere that he planned to retire to. So this was business as usual for Anini, and not some ploy to avenge Kingsley Eweka's death. Some sources claim that when Kingsley Eweka was being killed by firing squad, he told the police officers that his friend was going to avenge his death. And that was why people thought Anini was the one that people thought Kingsley was referring to. And maybe so, maybe not. Maybe Anini used that opportunity to avenge his death, but for the most part of it, this was Anini's job. This was what he did. This was what he needed to survive and make money. And that was all he knew, being a criminal. It's just unfortunate that a lot of police officers were always on his way, and that was why these police officers were killed, because they were in his way. But ordinarily and genuinely, Anini was afraid of police officers from the onset. Even when he was working with Kingsley Eweka, it was said or known that Anini begged Kingsley and his gang not to kill police officers. He begged for police officers to not be killed. Even during his reign, he was running away from a police officer called George Yamu, the corrupt police officer that was the sponsor for Kingsley Eweka gang. Now, George Yamu is a notable character that people need to understand when it comes to Lawrence Anini. He is the police officer behind a lot of the criminal activities back then. Although he was not the only one, there were other senior officers like him. George Yamu was the most popular because that was the one that Anini exposed the most after he was caught. George Yamu was known to equip criminal gangs with weaponry and info, and after they go and finish stealing the money, they bring it to him, he takes his cut, he kills his gang or arrests them or pretty much just betrays them. That was what George Yamu was known for. He would be the one to give these criminals in hand the weapons that they needed to rob, and after they are successfully doing it, or when they decide that they no longer want to be a criminal, Judge Iyamu comes for them, kills them, or pretty much just arrests them and give information to have them arrested and jailed. And it was believed that that was what Judge Iyamu did to Kingsley Eweka and his gang. When they were no longer serving him or giving him his court, Judge Iyamu decided to set them up, have them arrested, sentenced to death, and killed, because he always had evidence against these gangs. So he knew to cover his tracks and knew to keep them in a danger spot. So whenever he wants to destroy them, he would. And after destroying Kingsley Eweka, Judge Iyamu did not even see Anini as a threat. It was Anini who reached out to him and asked him and begged him to release Kingsley Eweka before they get killed. And Judge Iyamu, knowing fully well that he could not, or he did not have the power of releasing, or he would not release Kingsley Eweka and his gang, collected 50,000 naira, that was a big money at the time, from Lawrence Anini, promising to release them only for him to have them killed. Now, Judge Iyamu was not even coming for Lawrence Anini, because he always knew Lawrence Anini was the driver. However, when Lawrence started reigning, that was when Judge Iyamu started coming for Lawrence, because now his name is popular and he knows Lawrence by face. Judge Iyamu was the guy behind trying to find Lawrence Anini. Lawrence claimed that Judge Iyamu even went to his parents' home to break the leg of his mother and his father in the bid of looking for him. That it was even Judge Iyamu that went to his business that he had created in Saple or somewhere to destroy it. Because at the time Lawrence Anini was reigning supreme, he was also running away from Judge Iyamu.
From there, later on, I heard that they killed Kingsley Eweka in Fire Squad. And I went to Iyamu's house, that Abba, the money I've spent since then, how do you do it? I heard that you are the, whether it was Europe, I don't know the rank you have there. Why don't you go up with the money and save the boy? Then he said, by now, at any time he captured me, he must kill me. Then from there I have to escape. Then right from there I started escaping from Iyamu. Then to the extent he come to my village one certain day. When he come, he met 10,000 under my pillow when I was sleeping. Then I have to escape. Leave the money there. Then he took the 10,000. Then he have to carry my father's house, beat him, break her leg, go to my mother's house, beat him, break her leg. Then I have to escape. Then I bust out at Saple. Because if you are in our village, very close to Saple, then I have to escape. Then from there, started running for Iyamu. Then Iyamu, at times, once he just heard you are here, we just organize, between our boys, carry rifle, everything, just organize, then he will just go to that house. If you know you have money, then he can just finish you, tell you are about of escaping. Then you will go in. Then we just go with the money which is collected from you. The only thing was hesitant. Then I said, well, instead of Iyamu to catch me and kill, may be a difficult thing. Then I was escaping from.
Because that is the only officer that knew him by face that wanted him dead at the time. Judge Iyamu was really coming for Lawrence Anini, which is why it's hard to say Judge Iyamu was working with Lawrence Anini when he was reigning. It was most possible that Lawrence Anini was working with another corrupt police officer, and it might not have been Judge Iyamu. Judge Iyamu was definitely the one who worked with Kingsley Eweka during their time. So that was where Judge Iyamu and Lawrence Anini kind of clashed. So in retrospect, Anini was not exactly targeting police officers. He was afraid of them. He was running away from one. The only thing is, they were always in his way whenever he wanted to rob. So they became collateral damage most possibly. Now let's go to number 2. And I think this is where it will make a little more sense. Anini loved fame and attention. Anini enjoyed the attention he got. And that was why he kept putting his name out there. The fact is, when Anini was working with Kingsley, nobody knew him. But when he created his own gang, he made sure that his name was known. And whenever he wrote letters to these bank managers or police officers, he made sure his name was put in it. He knows they did not know his face, so his name was always written down on it. His name was always there. He would write letters to commissioners of police. He even wrote a letter to the then military ruler, Babangida at the time, speaking out for the poor and the drivers and, trying to cut down tax, trying to make life better for the poor people. So he appeared to be some kind of Robin Hood, the criminal who stole from the rich and gave to the poor, which would be indicated in one of his operations where he stole money and sprayed it in the air, and people knew he was Anini and they picked the money, and that kind of made Anini feel like he was trying to control his image as a known criminal, but yet somebody who was the voice for the poor. And Anini did like the attention. His first letter went viral. It was on the news that the robber who did or stole or who robbed this bank is known as Lawrence Anini, but at the same time, nobody knew his face, but his name was everywhere. This is when Anini started reigning. This is when Anini became known. This is when Anini became popular. For every operation he would do, he would make sure to write a letter informing the people or the police that he was going to carry out this operation. And when this letter was given, it would be published on the news, on the radio, it would be everywhere. And Anini enjoyed it. But the problem is, Anini was not exactly the major badass in his gang. Anini had 4 to 5 people in his gang that he hired, that he recruited. And all these 4 to 5 people were equally just as dangerous. And they were all fully equipped. One of them was known as his lieutenant, and that was Monday Sumbo. Anini's lieutenant, Anini's assistant, Anini's sidekick, Anini's guy, the guy that was Anini's right-hand man in his gang. And Sumbo might actually just be the criminal that we think Anini is. Sumbo might be the one that we all think was Anini. Sumbo was the brutal one in the gang. Sumbo was the one who knew how to operate guns. Anini was skilled with vehicles and cars. That was his specialty. During his time with Kingsley Weka, he knew a little about guns, but he didn't handle much gun because he was focused on driving. However, when it came to his gang, Sumbo was the one who knew guns.
How did you become the toughest? What makes you the toughest?
Probably one, we are fully armed. We are rifle, then Baretta. Once another gang will be on locally with pistol. It's not all that can operate. What else? It's not all that can operate any rifle. And for me, when you give me my submachine gun, give it to me. When I ask them, I need to see them how to shoot. You can ask them. I'm the principal operator.
Principal operator?
Yes.
Who taught you how to shoot?
When I look at any gun like this, I turn over it. I look before the 1 hour. I know how to operate.
He was the one who had a hot temper because he was a stammerer. And if possible that Anini killed 11 people, Sumbo might have actually been the one who killed 10 of them. But since there were other members of the gang, let's split it. If Anini was said to have killed 11 or 12 people throughout his 4 months reign, what is 10 people or what is 11 people divided into 5 criminals? That is maybe 2 to 1 each. That means one criminal killed 2 people. So how many people did Anini himself kill? That is why a lot of the credit or dangerous mindset that is being attributed to Anini might not actually be fitting, because there's a big chance that somebody else in the gang did most of the killing, and Anini might not have done so much of it. But what Anini did do was put himself in the forefront, was to put his face in the park, was to put his name out there. He took full responsibility for it. He put his name out there fearlessly because he knew he was surrounded by badass criminals. Him, on the other hand, wasn't so bad. He just had the power to control badass people because he was older than them and he knew the system of how to operate. He was the one who collected the money and shared it among them. So he was the executive guy in the group. He wasn't the badass commando that movies now have made him to look like, the guy who held the guns. Sumbo was the one who most likely did majority of the killing. Sumbo was the one who carried out the assassination attempt on a commissioner of police, and it was believed that he was hired by George Yamu to do so because George Yamu wanted that position too. So why didn't they send Anini directly to go and carry out assassination? If he was so badass, he would have done it. But Anini wasn't as good as people thought he was. He wasn't as great as people thought he was. He wasn't as badass as people thought he was. And that was why George Yamu most likely sent Sumbo to do it. You also need to put in mind that in as much as they were a gang, they also had their individuality. Somebody could go and carry out an operation on his own by himself. The other gang members could do the same. But whenever they had a job together, they would go as a group. The point of this fact is that Anini only enjoyed mostly the attention that came with being in this criminal group. A lot of the dirty work was not done by him. A lot of the killing, the shooting was not done by him. They were done by the other 4 or 5 members in the group. He was only leading them. He was the one that put his name in front. He was the one that put his face in front. Maybe he killed 1 or 2 people to fuel himself. Maybe he did kill a few people, maybe. But a lot of the dirty work or a lot of the dangerous action movie badass thing that was done during Anini's 4 months reign was done by mostly the other members of the group and not Anini himself. But Anini did like the attention. He enjoyed it. He loved it. He was famous and that was what he wanted. This is even what he wanted. Look at us talking about him in the video. That was kind of like who Anini was. He was just enjoying the fame. He wasn't as strong or badass or dangerous as anyone would paint him to be. On his own, individually, by himself, when you see him, he really wasn't as dreadful. His name, however, carried a lot of weight. And which takes us to our number 1 point or number 1 fact. Anini was a weakling. Anini was weak. Anini was a baby. Anini was a crybaby. He wasn't as tough as people thought he was. He wasn't so tough. He wasn't that mindless, dangerous criminal that would bomb an entire state if he had a chance. Anini was soft in a way. And this may come as a shock to a lot of people who thought he's the ideal criminal to admire. But he really wasn't. Because the way Anini was caught and arrested would be one of the most shameful, disappointing way ever. Even back then, at the time, in Benin City, a lot of people who were fans of Anini were disappointed with the way he was caught and arrested and the way he quickly caved in. Other criminals would put up a fight. Other criminals would be resilient. But Anini did not waste time to cave in. He did not waste time to cry and beg. He did not waste time to start pointing out people. He was just like a teenager that was caught stealing a loaf of bread. And he began pointing, Naim send me, Naim do it, Naim do it. He became a child that was afraid of being flogged 1 stroke of the cane. As a badass criminal, you should have taken a lot of bullets. But 1 bullet on Anini's leg and he shamefully caved in. A lot of people even criticized it because they believed that he had a chance of escaping or at least going longer with the police because they did not know him by face. So that was it. Anini wasn't as tough as people remember him to be. And even back then, history has it in record that when he was caught and arrested, it was so disappointing for somebody who was so hyped to be a criminal. The people of Benin City at the time were disappointed in the way Anini was caught because he was some kind of Robin Hood. They thought he was one big badass guy. But when they caught him, they were like, oh, that was how? So how did they catch him? Like we already said it before, Anini being known by name was not mostly known by face in the large percentage of the masses. But another problem Anini also forgot was that people actually did know him by face. People knew him. He had girlfriends. He was a womanizer. He rode with people and he made sure that to his small group of people, he let them know that he was the Anini because now he's a famous guy. So, oh my God, this was a big deal. He's Anini. So that was something he enjoyed. It's like being an actress in a very popular movie and you go down, you're like, I made it that film. I'm the one who. That was how Anini operated in his grassroots level. Although he didn't stay one place and was going from place to place, trying to escape the police, he eventually got to be in a place where, I don't know if it was a brothel, but somewhere in Benin City, and somebody tipped off the police that Anini was there. And when the police came, they came massively, as though they were coming to prepare for a fight. You know, they came like, now this is going to be war. We're going to get Anini, so prepare because this is going to be a big, world war. The police were expecting a fight coming to arrest Anini. They came prepared with cars, guns, weapons. And when they knocked at the door, Anini was the one, according to history, that went to open the door. But in the movie, they broke in. But in reality, Anini was the one who boldly went to open the door thinking it was another girl that was coming. I don't know if they did not have peepholes then because he would have seen it was a police officer. When he opened the door, he just knew instantly that he was effed. But the thing is, they did not know him by face. So the police, in their mind, whatever guy they find in that house, or if they found 4 guys in that house, one of them would be Anini. If they found 2, one of them would be Anini. And if they found 1, he would be most likely Anini. But when it came to knowing Anini by face, they did not know him by face. So when they came in, they asked the guy who opened the door, where is Anini? Anini, knowing very well he's the one they were looking for, claimed that Anini, or the person that they're looking for, was in an inner room hiding under the bed, that they should go and check it. A group of police officers went there to check. At the same time, Anini was trying his best to leave. Unlike in the movie where he was with his girlfriend, in reality, he was with multiple girls. He wasn't with one girl, he was with a group of girls. They were all, I don't know, whatever he was doing with the girls. They were all rubbing his ego. So he was with about 4 to 5 girls. So Anini was trying to sneak out with the hopes that the police officers were going into the inner room to find who the real Anini was. But the leader of the squad held him back, saw that he was being sneaky, and shot one of his legs and asked him, "Where is Anini?" And that was the moment Anini broke character and said that he's the one they're looking for. He even begged them. He even said, I swear, I'm not going to lie to you. Let me be Anini." And he started crying, started begging, started weeping. And the police were even disappointed. They were like, was it this easy? Really? No show? I thought we were going to do some kind of Infinity War battle here. And that was how they caught Anini, and it was so disappointing.
Where is Anini? Anini there is a house. Where is Anini? Anini there is a house. Shut up. We have Anini.
A lot of people called him weak. The police officer were disappointed that this is the Anini that was giving them terror for all these years. So this is the Anini. They were mostly disappointed and ashamed that they gave him way too much credit than he deserved. Other members of his gang were also caught. His leg was shot and he had to be taken to the hospital. He was arrested there, and that was where they did a lot of his interviews, and that's where he made a lot of confession. That's where he started calling out everybody, and that's why, okay, it was not even then that he actually exposed Georgiamu. Let me say this. He had actually exposed Georgiamu earlier on. Remember, throughout his 4 months, he was also running away from Officer Georgiamu. He was running away from him. So, in one of his letters he wrote to the police, Anini actually exposed all the corrupt police officers that were backing him up. I don't think he exposed the one that was giving him his direct contact. Maybe he did because he knew how they operated. Once they were done with you, they will come for you. So, in a letter, Anini wrote, before his arrest or before they found him, he actually exposed Georgiamu and other corrupt police officers who did what Georgiamu did. And Georgiamu was already in custody. And why he did that was to keep Georgiamu off his back. He did not want Georgiamu to keep coming for him because he was running away from Georgiamu, and Georgiamu was looking for him because he was now popular and famous, and he most likely would be good business, or maybe Georgiamu was worried that he would expose him. But I think Georgiamu was looking for money, because in his interview with the press when he was in the hospital, and then he said that Georgiamu was looking for money and kept coming to him for money. And that was why he was running away from Georgiamu. And that was why Georgiamu went to his hometown to beat Anini's parents up and destroy his business in Sable. So that could be why Anini exposed Georgiamu. And this was long before Anini was captured. And maybe that was why Georgiamu was not the one who led the team to capture him. It was another officer who was not corrupt and who probably did not know what Anini looked like. And so that was how Anini was caught, in the most weak, pathetic, childish, and disappointing way. So much for somebody who is the most dangerous criminal in Nigerian history. The thing is, Anini was a dangerous criminal. No one is taking it away from him. Everything he was accused of, he did. Even though he killed 1 or 2 persons, he is responsible for everything that happened. He is responsible for killing everyone else because he took responsibility for it by putting his name out there. He was the mastermind of all of these people. He was the mind of it. Throughout his reign, he may not be the badass, he may not be the Rambo of the group, but he definitely was the mastermind. And it makes him the criminal that he is. The point of this video is to let a lot of people know that individually on his own, Anini wasn't as tough as people remembers him to be. Because currently in our world today, people depict Anini as somebody who was badass, dreadful, dangerous, who would kill you if you stand on his way, who was a massive, deadly weapon throughout the 80s. Whereas his reign was only for 4 months, and he was not as dangerous or tough as people remembers him to be. So that's it, guys. This is the end of our video. This is all the facts. I'm sure there are probably more that can prove that Anini really wasn't the badass, deadass, Rambo, deadly Terminator guy that history has somehow painted him to be. He was deadly and dangerous and smart and good at what he did, but I don't think he deserves the #1 spot as the most deadly and dangerous criminal. Not when half of his dealings or half of his things he did or half of the people he killed or more than half of the people he killed were killed by other members of his gang. If anybody should be deadly and dangerous, it should be his Lieutenant Sumbo. That is the one that most likely did major of the killing. He was the fearless one. He was the one that enjoyed the guns. He knew the guns. He bragged about it in his interview. He enjoyed talking about guns. He was one who knew guns and loved shooting guns. And he most likely could have been the one who did most of the killing when it came to the people that Anini may or may not have killed. So guys, thank you for watching. By now, I hope you have subscribed to our channel. Please, if you haven't, do so to subscribe. And you can join our channel to check out other videos that are not available for the public. Some of them are mostly morbid, but if you join our channel, you can see and access some of those videos. And if you subscribe to our Facebook also, you would see some of these videos that are hidden and exclusive to people who subscribe or join our channel. Don't forget to like this video, give it a thumbs up, and also let me know your thoughts when it came to some of these facts. Are there some facts that I might have misinterpreted or I might have gotten wrong? Or are there some facts that I should have added? Let me know some facts about Anini that you think I did not know, because I'm not an expert. I wasn't even born in the 80s. So this is just based off on research and what I've seen around and the articles that I had read. So let me know some of the things that you might know that might say otherwise or might agree to the point that maybe Anini as an individual wasn't that dangerous. But it's up to you guys now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and don't forget to share also. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.